Woman poses with her husband, zooms in on the picture, and turns pale with fear. The late afternoon sunlight filtered through the tall windows of the Rosewood Inn, casting golden patterns across the polished wooden floors. Elena Morrison adjusted the delicate silver bracelet on her wrist, a 5th anniversary gift from her husband Marcus, as they were led to their table in the dining room. The historic inn, nestled in the quiet town of Oakridge, was known for its Victorian charm and exquisite cuisine, perfect for their anniversary celebration. "What do you think?" Marcus asked, his blue eyes crinkling at the corners as he smiled. His dark hair was neatly combed back, and he wore the navy blazer Elena had given him last Christmas. "Worth the 2-hour drive?" Elena took in the elegant chandeliers, the antique furnishings, and the general air of timeless sophistication. "Absolutely," she replied, reaching across the table to squeeze his hand. "I've wanted to visit this place ever since I saw those photos in the travel magazine." Their server, a young woman with a name tag that read Lily, approached with a warm smile. "Good evening. Welcome to the Rosewood. Can I start you off with something from our wine selection? We have a lovely Cabernet that pairs beautifully with our prime rib special." "That sounds perfect," Marcus said. "We're celebrating our 5th anniversary today." "Congratulations!" Lily exclaimed. "The Rosewood has a tradition for celebrating couples. Would you like to have your photo taken by our grand mirror? It's a bit of local lore. Photos taken there are said to bring lasting happiness." Elena glanced at the ornate gold-framed mirror that dominated the far wall of the dining room. It was massive, at least 8 feet tall, with an intricate frame featuring carved roses and vines. The glass itself had that slightly wavery quality of antique mirrors, reflecting the room with a dreamlike quality. "I love that," Elena replied. "What do you think, Marcus?" There was a brief flicker of something, hesitation, in his eyes, but it vanished so quickly that Elena thought she might have imagined it. "Of course," he said, standing up. "Let's do it." They walked over to the mirror, positioning themselves in front of its gleaming surface. The dining room behind them was captured in its reflection, the soft glow of candles at each table, the rich burgundy wallpaper, the other diners enjoying their meals. "Perfect," Lily said, taking Elena's phone. "Now stand close together, that's it." She took several photos, the flash briefly illuminating their faces. "These look great. The mirror really does add something special to photos." Elena thanked her, and they returned to their table just as their wine arrived. The evening unfolded in a pleasant blur of excellent food, reminiscing about their first date, and plans for the future. Marcus was particularly attentive, refilling her glass before she could ask and listening intently as she talked about her hopes of expanding her graphic design business. "To 5 years," Marcus said, raising his glass for a toast. "And to many more." Elena clinked her glass against his. "To us," she replied, feeling a warm glow of contentment. They had weathered some difficult times together, especially the early years when Marcus was still grieving the loss of his sister Talia. But they had emerged stronger for it. By the time they finished their chocolate soufflé dessert, the dining room had mostly emptied. Elena suppressed a yawn as they made their way up the grand staircase to their room, a corner suite with a 4-poster bed and a view of the inn's meticulously maintained gardens. "I'm going to take a quick shower," Marcus said, kissing her cheek before disappearing into the bathroom. Elena kicked off her heels and settled onto the plush bed, listening to the sound of running water. She pulled out her phone, eager to look through the photos from their evening. The first few were shots of their meals. Marcus had teased her about her habit of photographing food, but then she reached the mirror photos. The first one was slightly blurry. She swiped past it. The second was better. They were both smiling, the ornate mirror frame visible around them, the dining room spread out behind their reflection. She zoomed in to see their expressions better and was about to swipe to the next when something caught her eye. In the background of the mirror's reflection, at a table partially obscured by a decorative column, sat a figure. Elena zoomed in further, squinting at the pixelated image. It was a woman, sitting alone. She had long dark hair that fell past her shoulders and unnaturally pale skin. But what made Elena's breath catch was what the woman was wearing, Around her neck gleamed a silver necklace with an unmistakable sapphire pendant at its center. Elena's fingers went numb. The phone nearly slipped from her grasp. That necklace. She would recognize it anywhere from the photos Marcus had shown her. It was Talia's necklace, the one Marcus had described in painfully specific detail when telling Elena about his sister's funeral. A custom-made piece from a jeweler in Prague, featuring a rare blue sapphire surrounded by tiny diamonds in an Art Deco setting. Marcus had insisted on having it buried with Talia, saying it had been her most treasured possession. But Talia had died 10 years ago, in a car accident overseas. Her body had been so badly damaged that Marcus's parents had opted for a closed casket funeral. So how was her necklace here? In this photo? Around the neck of a stranger? Elena's heart hammered against her ribs as she zoomed in even further, trying to make out the woman's features. The image quality deteriorated with each level of zoom, but there was something familiar about the shape of her face, the set of her eyes. Something that reminded her of. The bathroom door opened, releasing a cloud of steam. "Bathroom's all yours," Marcus said cheerfully, rubbing his hair with a towel. Elena quickly locked her phone screen, her mind racing. Should she show him? Ask him about it? "Everything okay?" Marcus asked, noticing her expression. "You look like you've seen a ghost." The word ghost sent a chill down Elena's spine. "I'm fine," she managed, forcing a smile. "Just tired. It's been a long day." Marcus nodded and turned away to hang up his towel, giving Elena a moment to compose herself. She slipped her phone under her pillow, suddenly unsure if she wanted to share her discovery with him just yet. There had to be a logical explanation, right? Maybe it was just someone with a similar necklace. Or a trick of the light making an ordinary pendant look like Talia's distinctive piece. But as she headed to the bathroom for her own shower, Elena couldn't shake the image from her mind. The pale woman, sitting alone, wearing a deceased woman's necklace. And the strangest part? In the photo, the woman seemed to be looking directly at the camera. Directly at Elena. Almost as if she knew her picture was being taken. Almost as if she wanted to be seen. Under the hot spray of the shower, Elena tried to reason with herself. Marcus had been devastated by his sister's death. He still rarely spoke about Talia, and when he did, it was always with a mixture of grief and what Elena had interpreted as guilt, survivor's guilt, perhaps. The few photos he kept of Talia were tucked away in a box he rarely opened. By the time Elena emerged from the bathroom in her nightgown, she had almost convinced herself that she was overreacting. The dining room had been dimly lit. The mirror's reflection was distorted. The woman had probably been wearing a completely different necklace that just happened to look similar in poor lighting. Marcus was already in bed, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when she entered, his smile warm and familiar. "Come here," he said, patting the space beside him. "I was just looking at those reservations for the wine tour tomorrow." Elena slipped under the covers beside him, her body automatically curving against his in the familiar way of long-term couples. But as they discussed their plans for the next day, her thoughts kept drifting back to the photo. To the woman. To the necklace that shouldn't exist anymore. Later, after Marcus had fallen asleep, his breathing deep and even beside her, Elena carefully retrieved her phone from under her pillow. The blue light illuminated her face as she opened the photo again, zooming in on the mysterious woman in the background. There was no mistaking it now that she looked more carefully. It was Talia's necklace, the same intricate silver chain, the same distinctive setting around the sapphire. Elena had never seen the actual necklace in person, but Marcus had described it so many times that she felt she would recognize it anywhere. A chill spread through her body, raising goosebumps on her arms. She glanced at Marcus, sleeping peacefully beside her, and wondered, what other secrets might he be keeping? And who was the pale woman with the deceased woman's necklace? Elena turned off her phone and placed it on the nightstand, but sleep eluded her. She stared at the ceiling, listening to the unfamiliar creaks and sighs of the old inn, feeling as though the ground beneath their perfect marriage had suddenly shifted. Sunlight streamed through the curtains as Elena opened her eyes. For a moment, she forgot about the strange discovery from the night before, but then the memory rushed back with startling clarity. She turned to find Marcus already awake, scrolling through his phone. "Morning," he said, leaning over to kiss her forehead. "Sleep well?" "Not really," Elena admitted, sitting up against the pillows. She took a deep breath. "Marcus, I need to show you something." She reached for her phone on the nightstand and opened the gallery. Finding the mirror photo, she zoomed in on the woman in the background. "Look at this," she said, handing him the phone. "Do you see her? The woman sitting alone in the back?" Marcus squinted at the screen, his expression neutral at first. Then, as his eyes registered what he was seeing, Elena watched his face change. It was subtle, a slight tightening around his mouth, a flicker in his eyes. But after 5 years of marriage, she knew his every expression. "What about her?" he asked, his voice deliberately casual. "The necklace she's wearing," Elena pressed. "Isn't that Talia's? The one you told me was buried with her?" Marcus stared at the photo for a few seconds longer than necessary before passing the phone back. He laughed, but it sounded forced. "It's just a similar style. Lots of sapphire necklaces out there. Besides, the picture is blurry, it could be any blue gemstone. But the setting is identical. The silver chain, that Art Deco design you described." "Elena," he cut her off, his tone sharper than usual. "It's a coincidence. Some random woman with a similar necklace. That's all." He softened his voice, reaching for her hand. "You never even saw Talia's necklace in person." That was true. Elena had only heard descriptions and seen distant photos where the details weren't clear. But something about his reaction didn't sit right with her. "You're sure it was buried with her?" she asked carefully. Marcus swung his legs over the side of the bed, turning away from her. "Yes. I'm sure." He stood up abruptly. "I'm going to grab us some coffee from downstairs." After he left, Elena stared at the photo again. The woman's face was too blurry to make out clearly, but there was something in her posture, a deliberate stillness, as if she wanted to be noticed. Throughout their breakfast on the inn's terrace and the subsequent wine tour, Elena couldn't stop thinking about the photo. Marcus seemed determined to act as though their morning conversation hadn't happened, chatting enthusiastically about the different vintages they sampled. That evening, back in their room, Elena decided to investigate further. While Marcus was in the shower, she meticulously examined the photo, checking the angles and timestamp. 7:42 p.m. she murmured. That would have been around the time they were taking the mirror photos with Lily. She pulled up another photo from dinner, their dessert, timestamped at 8:15. The mysterious woman couldn't be seen in the background of that one. When they checked out the next morning, Elena lingered at the reception desk after Marcus went to get the car. "Excuse me," she said to the receptionist. "Last night, was there a woman dining alone? Dark hair, pale skin, wearing a distinctive sapphire necklace?" The receptionist checked the reservation records. "No solo diners in that time slot, ma'am. All pairs or groups." "Could she have been seated near the mirror? Around 7:40 p.m.? That area was actually empty last night except for your table. The Jones party was seated there earlier, but they left by 7. Is something wrong?" Elena thanked her and walked away, confusion mounting. She decided to check the photo one more time before Marcus returned. But when she opened her gallery, the mirror photo was gone. "Ready to go?" Marcus appeared at her side, car keys in hand. "My photo from the mirror is missing," Elena said, scrolling frantically through her gallery. "Which one?" He peered over her shoulder. "The one with the woman in the background, the one wearing Talia's necklace." "Oh," Marcus said, his voice oddly flat. "I might have accidentally deleted it when I was looking through your photos this morning. Sorry about that." Elena stared at him. In 5 years, Marcus had never deleted her photos. "You deleted it?" she repeated. "It was blurry anyway," he said, turning toward the exit. "Come on, we should get going if we want to beat traffic." The drive home was quieter than usual. Elena couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. Why was Marcus so dismissive? Why had he deleted the photo? And who was the woman that, according to the staff, hadn't even been there? Most troubling of all was the realization that in all the years they'd been together, Marcus had always been guarded when it came to Talia. She had attributed it to grief, but now she wondered if there was something more, something he didn't want her to know. As fields and forests passed by outside the car window, Elena made a decision. She needed to find out what really happened to Talia, and what that necklace was doing around a stranger's neck. 3 days after their anniversary trip, Elena sat in her car outside a modest brick house in the suburbs. This was the home of Evelyn Morrison, Marcus's mother, whom Elena had met only twice in 5 years of marriage. Marcus had always claimed his relationship with his parents had deteriorated after Talia's death, that grief had torn them apart. But now, Elena wondered if there was more to the story. She had told Marcus she was meeting a client, and he hadn't questioned it. The ease with which she'd lied troubled her, but not as much as the secrets she suspected he was keeping. Taking a deep breath, Elena walked to the front door and rang the bell. After a moment, a slender woman with silver-streaked hair opened the door, surprise registering on her face. "Elena! This is unexpected. I'm sorry for dropping by unannounced, Evelyn. I was hoping we could talk." Evelyn hesitated before nodding. "Come in. I just made tea." The living room was impeccably tidy, with family photos arranged on a side table. Elena noticed that several featured a young woman with dark hair who must be Talia. In one, she wore what appeared to be the sapphire necklace. "I've been thinking about family lately," Elena began carefully after they were seated. "Marcus speaks so little about Talia, and I feel like I hardly know anything about her." Evelyn's face softened. "He took her death the hardest. They were always close, despite their differences. The necklace in that photo," Elena said, pointing to the frame. "It was special to her, wasn't it?" Evelyn picked up the photo, her fingers tracing the glass over Talia's face. "Yes. It was her 21st birthday gift from us. Custom made in Prague during our family trip. One of a kind." She set the photo down, a shadow crossing her face. "Marcus had it buried with her, or so he said." The phrasing made Elena's skin prickle. "What do you mean?" "Nothing," Evelyn said quickly. "It's just, with a closed casket, I never saw her with it. I had to take Marcus's word." She paused. "Why the sudden interest in the necklace?" "I thought I saw something similar recently," Elena replied vaguely. "It made me curious." Evelyn's gaze sharpened, but she didn't press further. They talked for another half hour, with Elena steering the conversation toward Talia's accident. The details were frustratingly vague: an overseas trip, poor road conditions, a private funeral arranged by Marcus. "I have some of Talia's things in the attic," Evelyn offered as Elena prepared to leave. "Nothing valuable, just mementos. Would you like to see them sometime?" "I'd like that very much," Elena replied sincerely. Back in her car, Elena sat processing what she'd learned. Evelyn's comment about taking Marcus's word stuck with her. It implied doubt, or at least, a lack of confirmation. The following day, while Marcus was at work, Elena drove to the storage facility where they kept overflow items from their apartment. Marcus had mentioned once that some boxes from his parents' house were stored there, including things that had belonged to Talia. The storage unit was dusty and crowded. Elena began carefully sorting through boxes labeled in Marcus's handwriting. Most contained typical household items, but in the back corner, she found a box marked simply T. Inside were yearbooks, journals, and photographs, Talia's life stored away in cardboard. Elena felt a pang of guilt for invading this private space but pressed on. At the bottom of the box, she found a folder containing newspaper clippings. The first was an obituary. Talia Morrison, 24, died tragically in an automobile accident while traveling in Eastern Europe. It mentioned the closed casket service but gave no details about the accident itself. Another clipping was more informative, a small article about the accident from an English-language Prague newspaper. It mentioned that the victim's face had been disfigured beyond recognition, necessitating identification through dental records. "That's why the closed casket," Elena murmured. But as she continued searching, inconsistencies emerged. There was no death certificate among the papers. No official autopsy report. No photos of the accident scene. For a man who meticulously documented everything, these omissions seemed odd. A final folder contained travel documents, Talia's last known movements. Her passport had been stamped for entry to the Czech Republic 3 months before her alleged death, but there was no record of her traveling after that. More curiously, Elena found a receipt for a private mental health facility outside Prague, dated 2 weeks before the reported accident. The facility's name was circled in red pen, Sveta Katarina Retreat. Elena photographed everything with her phone before carefully replacing the items. Her mind raced with questions. Why would Talia be in a mental health facility? And why had Marcus never mentioned it? As she drove home, a theory began forming, one too disturbing to fully contemplate. If Talia had been institutionalized, if no one had viewed her body after the accident, if Marcus had been the one to identify her and arrange the funeral. Elena pulled over, suddenly feeling ill. Was it possible that Talia hadn't died at all? That Marcus had, for some reason, fabricated her death? It seemed impossible. Unthinkable. But the woman in the mirror, wearing that distinctive necklace, a necklace supposedly buried with a woman who might not be deceased. Elena needed more evidence. She needed to know what had really happened at that mental health facility in Prague. And most importantly, she needed to find out who the pale woman in the photo had been, and if, somehow, impossibly, it could have been Talia herself. Elena sat cross-legged on the floor of her home office, surrounded by printouts, notes, and a timeline sheet constructed on a large poster board. Marcus was away on a 3-day business trip, giving her the freedom to spread out her investigation. For the past week, she'd been methodically piecing together Talia's final months. Using Marcus's laptop while he slept, she discovered an encrypted folder buried in his cloud storage. His password hadn't been difficult to guess, Talia's birthday followed by her initials. The contents had been disturbing. Email exchanges between Marcus and the Sveta Katarina retreat revealed that Talia had been admitted for severe paranoid delusions and self-destructive behavior. One email mentioned her belief that her family was stealing from her and monitoring her movements. Elena stared at the timeline she'd created. January 10th, 10 years ago Talia admitted to Sveta Katarina. February 3rd, Marcus visits facility, requests increased medication. March 15th, email from facility director about Talia's improved condition. March 18th, Marcus wires large payment to facility. March 21st, email from facility reporting Talia missing from grounds. April 2nd, Marcus files missing persons report, only locally, never escalated. April 17th, Marcus informs facility he's located Talia. May 8th, reported date of Talia's fatal accident. May 12th, closed casket funeral. The 2-month gap between Talia going missing from the facility and her supposed death troubled Elena deeply. And why hadn't Marcus informed the police when he found her? Where had she been during those weeks? Even more damning was what Elena had found in Marcus's financial records. 3 days after Talia's funeral, $2.4 million had been transferred from a trust fund in Talia's name to an account under Marcus's control. A sick feeling settled in Elena's stomach as she recalled snippets of conversations over the years. Marcus mentioning the family money that had funded his startup. His vague references to an inheritance that had come at a difficult time. Had he orchestrated everything, the institutionalization, the fake death, to gain control of Talia's trust fund? Elena reached for her phone, pulled up the recovered photo from the inn. The image quality was poor, she'd had to retrieve it from her phone's cache files, but the woman's face seemed to stare accusingly from the screen. Her research into the Sveta Katarina retreat had yielded troubling information. The facility had closed 3 years ago following allegations of patient mistreatment and experimental treatments. Several former patients had filed lawsuits, claiming they'd been held against their will and subjected to unauthorized drug protocols. Had Talia been one of them? Elena startled as her phone chimed with an incoming email. The sender was anonymous, the subject line blank. With trembling fingers, she opened it. The body contained only a single image attachment, a security camera photo from the Rosewood Inn. The timestamp showed 5:23 p.m., about 2 hours before Elena and Marcus had arrived for dinner. In it, a woman with long dark hair entered through a side door. Though her face was partially obscured, the sapphire necklace at her throat gleamed in the camera's flash. Elena's breath caught. The email contained no message, no explanation of how the sender had known to send this to her. Had someone at the inn recognized her interest? Or was someone else watching, someone who wanted her to know the truth? She enlarged the image, studying every pixel. The woman moved with purpose, her posture straight, her gaze directed away from the camera as if deliberately avoiding it. There was something familiar in her bearing that Elena couldn't quite place. A loud knock at the apartment door made her jump. Heart racing, she quickly gathered her research materials, shoving them into a portfolio before going to answer. A delivery man stood in the hallway with a small package. "Delivery for Elena Morrison?" She signed for it, puzzled. She hadn't ordered anything. Inside the package was a small velvet box with no note, no return address. With a sense of foreboding, she opened it. Inside lay a single pearl earring. The significance hit her like a physical blow. Among Talia's belongings in storage, she'd seen a photo of her wearing pearl earrings, distinctive ones with small diamond chips in the setting. Marcus had mentioned once that the set had been a family heirloom, that Talia had been wearing them when she died. This earring matched the description perfectly. Elena sank onto the couch, the implications overwhelming her. If the earrings had been buried with Talia, how could one be here? If Talia was truly passed, who was the woman at the inn? And who was sending these messages? The only explanation that made sense was too terrible to contemplate, yet impossible to ignore. Talia was alive. She had escaped whatever fate Marcus had planned for her. And now she was reaching out, using Elena to expose the truth. But if Marcus had lied about something this massive, what else might he be capable of? And what would he do if he discovered Elena knew his secret? She glanced at the calendar. Marcus would be home tomorrow. She had less than 24 hours to decide what to do with everything she'd learned, and whether to confront the man she'd married, who was increasingly becoming a stranger to her. The key turning in the lock sent a jolt of adrenaline through Elena's body. She'd been sitting motionless at the kitchen table for nearly an hour, her evidence arranged in front of her, printouts of emails, the security camera photo, the timeline, financial documents, and at the center, the pearl earring in its velvet box. "Elena?" Marcus called out, dropping his suitcase in the entryway. "I'm home early. Meeting's wrapped up sooner than." He stopped abruptly in the kitchen doorway, his eyes moving from Elena's face to the items spread across the table. His expression shifted almost imperceptibly, but Elena caught it, the flash of recognition, followed by something cold and calculating. "What's all this?" he asked, his voice carefully neutral. "I think you know," Elena replied, surprised by the steadiness of her own voice. "Sit down, Marcus. We need to talk about Talia." A muscle twitched in his jaw, but he sat across from her, his posture rigid. For a long moment neither spoke. Then Elena pushed the security camera photo toward him. "She was at the inn that night. Before we arrived." She watched his reaction carefully. "She's alive, isn't she?" Marcus stared at the photo, his face unreadable. "Where did you get this?" "Someone sent it to me. Someone who knows what you did." Elena placed the earring box beside the photo. "This came too. Wasn't Talia wearing these pearl earrings when she supposedly died? The ones you said were buried with her?" His hands had begun to tremble slightly. "You don't understand." "Then help me understand, Marcus," Elena said, her voice rising. "Help me understand why you told everyone your sister died in an accident when she was actually in a mental health facility. Help me understand why you accessed her trust fund 3 days after her funeral. Help me understand why she's walking around wearing the necklace you claimed was buried with her." The silence that followed was deafening. Marcus stared at his hands, and when he finally looked up, his eyes were filled with tears. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," he whispered. "I was trying to protect everyone. By faking your sister's death? By stealing her money? She was sick," he shouted suddenly, slamming his palm on the table. "Sicker than anyone knew. The things she was saying, the things she was doing, she was a danger to herself and others." Elena shook her head. "So you had her committed. That I can understand. But the rest of it? The doctors said she might never recover." Marcus continued, his voice dropping. "They were trying experimental treatments, but nothing was working. Then one day, she attacked an orderly. Mortally wounded him. The facility wanted to transfer her to a high-security institution where she'd be locked away forever." He ran a hand through his hair, looking suddenly exhausted. "I couldn't bear it. The thought of her living like that. So I made arrangements. Paid for a private care facility in the countryside. Somewhere peaceful, where she could be looked after properly. And the death certificate? The funeral?" Marcus's eyes didn't meet hers. "It was easier that way. For our parents, for everyone. To remember her as she was, not what she'd become. The money was to pay for her ongoing care." Elena studied his face, looking for signs of deception. "If that's true, then why is she here now? Why was she at the inn? Why is she contacting me?" Something shifted in Marcus's expression. His posture straightened, his eyes hardened. "She escaped," he said flatly. "6 months ago. The facility called me in a panic. She'd been showing signs of improvement, so they'd reduced her restrictions. She took advantage, attacked a nurse, and disappeared. And you didn't think to warn me? To tell me your potentially dangerous sister was on the loose? I didn't want to frighten you. I thought I could find her quietly, get her the help she needs." Elena held up the pearl earring. "And this? How do you explain her sending me this?" Marcus stared at it, his face pale. "She's playing with you. With us. This is what she does, Elena. She manipulates people." Something in his tone didn't ring true. Elena thought back to those emails she'd read, Talia's claims that her family was stealing from her. What if Talia had been right all along? "I want the truth, Marcus. All of it. Right now." Their eyes locked across the table. The moment stretched, taut with tension. Then, with a deep sigh that seemed to deflate him, Marcus broke. "Fine. You want the truth?" His voice hardened. "Talia was getting better. The treatments were working. But if she came back, she'd want control of her trust fund, money I'd already invested, money I couldn't pay back." The admission hung in the air between them. Elena felt sick. "So you kept her locked away? All these years?" Marcus leaned forward, his eyes pleading. "You have to understand, she's not stable. She's dangerous. Now she's out for revenge. She wants to destroy me, destroy us." Elena stood up slowly, gathering her evidence into her portfolio. "Where are you going?" Marcus demanded, rising too. "Away from you," Elena said simply. "I don't know who you are anymore." His face darkened. "You can't leave. Not now. Not when she's out there." "I'm not afraid of Talia," Elena replied, backing toward the door. "I'm afraid of what you've done. Of what you might do." Marcus moved suddenly, grabbing her wrist. "You don't understand what she's capable of." Elena wrenched free. "I understand exactly what you're capable of. That's enough." She turned and walked out, her heart pounding but her mind clear. As she closed the apartment door behind her, she thought of the woman in the mirror, Talia, watching, waiting, reaching out. It was time to find her and learn the whole truth. 3 days after leaving Marcus, Elena found herself once again at the Rosewood Inn. She checked into the same corner suite they'd shared on their anniversary, though this time she was alone. The irony wasn't lost on her, returning to the place where everything had begun to unravel, hoping to find answers. Marcus had called and texted relentlessly since she'd walked out. His messages oscillated between desperate pleas for her to return and ominous warnings about Talia's dangerous nature. She'd blocked his number after the 20th message. Standing in the elegantly appointed room, Elena felt a strange calm settle over her. Whatever happened next, she had chosen truth over comfortable lies. She couldn't go back to a life with Marcus now that she knew what he was capable of. She unpacked her overnight bag, placing the pearl earring on the nightstand. She'd brought it as a sort of talisman, a connection to the woman she was hoping would find her here. After freshening up, Elena made her way downstairs to the dining room. It was early, barely 6 o'clock, and the space was nearly empty. She requested a table near the ornate mirror and ordered a glass of wine. As she waited, Elena studied the mirror's reflection. From this angle, she could see most of the dining room, the entrance, and part of the lobby beyond. The perfect vantage point to watch for someone's arrival. An hour passed. Elena nursed her wine and picked at her dinner, her appetite diminished by anxiety. She began to wonder if she'd been foolish to come here, to think that Talia would somehow know to find her. By 8:30, the dining room had filled with other guests. Conversations and laughter created a pleasant buzz around her, but Elena remained hyper-aware of every new arrival, every movement at the periphery of her vision. At 9, she decided to try something. Pulling out her phone, she positioned herself in front of the mirror, just as she and Marcus had done days before. She took several photos, then returned to her table to examine them. In the first few, nothing seemed amiss. Just Elena, standing alone before the mirror, the dining room behind her reflection. But in the last photo, there she was. A woman with long dark hair stood in the shadowy corner near the mirror. Her face was clearer this time, pale with high cheekbones, eyes that even in the dim light seemed to burn with intensity. Around her neck, the sapphire necklace gleamed. Elena's head snapped up, scanning the room frantically. There was no one matching that description anywhere. She looked back at the photo, zooming in on the woman's face. There was something familiar in the shape of her eyes, the set of her mouth, features that resembled Marcus's, yet distinctly feminine. Talia. Elena stood, her chair scraping loudly against the floor. Several diners glanced her way, but she paid them no mind. She walked purposefully toward the spot where Talia had appeared in the photo, examining the wall, the corners, looking for any hidden door or passage. Nothing. Frustrated, she turned back toward the mirror. For an instant, so brief she might have imagined it, she thought she saw a flicker of movement in its depths, a face that wasn't her own. "Miss? Is everything all right?" A server approached, concern evident in her expression. "Yes, I'm fine," Elena replied automatically. Then, "Actually, can you tell me, is there anything unusual about this mirror? Any stories about it?" The young woman hesitated. "Well, there are some old tales. The mirror was here when the building was a private residence in the 1800s. Some say it remembers things. Shows things that aren't there." She smiled apologetically. "Just silly ghost stories. Nothing to worry about." Elena thanked her and returned to her table, unsettled. Was she chasing ghosts? Had stress and betrayal pushed her toward seeing things that weren't there? She gathered her belongings, suddenly eager to return to her room. As she crossed the lobby, she could have sworn she felt someone watching her, but each time she turned, she saw only other guests, staff, empty corridors. Back in her suite, Elena locked the door and leaned against it, exhaling slowly. This had been a mistake. Whatever closure she'd hoped to find here was clearly not forthcoming. She moved to the bedroom and froze. On the bedside table, next to the pearl earring she'd left there, lay its matching pair. Heart pounding, Elena approached slowly. There was no sign of forced entry, no indication anyone had been in the room. Yet the earring was unmistakably there, identical to the first. With trembling hands, she picked it up, holding the pair together. As she did, she noticed a folded piece of paper beneath, crisp white hotel stationery. Unfolding it revealed a message in elegant, flowing handwriting. "He buried me alive. Help me be seen." The words chilled her to the bone. She turned, half expecting to find someone behind her, but the room was empty. Moving to the bathroom, Elena splashed cold water on her face, trying to calm her racing heart. As she straightened, she caught a movement in the bathroom mirror, not her reflection, but someone else's. A woman with long dark hair and haunted eyes. Elena spun around. The bathroom was empty. When she looked back at the mirror, the strange reflection remained, staring not at her but through her. Slowly, deliberately, the woman in the mirror raised her hand, pointing towards something out of view. In that moment, Elena understood. The mirrors weren't showing ghosts or hallucinations. Somehow, they were showing the truth, a truth that existed in parallel with the lies she'd been told. Talia was alive. She wasn't dangerous or insane. She'd been silenced, hidden away, her existence denied. And now she was reaching out through the only means available to her, trying to reclaim her life, her story, her voice. Elena gathered the earrings and the note, her resolve hardening. She would find the real Talia. She would help her expose Marcus's deception. She would bring the truth to light, whatever the cost. As she prepared to leave, Elena took one last look at the mirror. Her own reflection stared back at her now, but somehow changed, more determined, more purposeful. The woman who had entered the Rosewood Inn was gone. In her place stood someone who would no longer accept comfortable lies, no matter how painful the truth might be.